You're listening to the Frequency and Flow podcast, episode number 14. In this episode, I'm going to be sharing all about the similarities and differences in human design and gene keys, the two primary energetic tools that I use in my business and coaching. So let's dive in. My journey with human design started almost 5 years ago now. It's something that I immediately took to and began to just immerse myself in. First for myself, and now more through coaching, well, of course still for myself, but through coaching others based on their own designs as well. It has truly, the integrating the tool of human design into my life and business has truly been a slow burn in terms of both my depth in the system and the embodiment that I've experienced or that I surrender to with this science. And I've talked about it. Sorry, I hit my microphone, but I've talked about this quite extensively, even as up to now on this podcast. Gene keys, on the other hand, gene keys I have had much more of a roller coaster relationship with. I have had highs and lows. It's one of those things that has continued to show itself to me over and over again while I continued to ignore it until one time I just couldn't. It first came into my awareness shortly after I got into human design, but I remember looking up my profile, my hologenetic profile, and it didn't make any sense to me. I didn't understand the shadow and the city, like gift and city. It just didn't really make sense. And so I didn't really spend much time with it. I kind of just filed it away and thought, oh, this isn't for me. Then I had, a couple of years later, I had another entrepreneur friend. While I was living in Chicago, we were just talking about things like your purpose and like what is, using these tools to understand your purpose in life better. And she started telling me about this system, about gene keys and how it helped her with her own business and offerings and understanding her purpose better. And so when I was with her, I looked at my profile again. And I think I got into maybe the first gene key, the first sphere, the life's work. And I kind of looked at it, but it just didn't resonate. So again, I let it go. The third time I looked into it, or the third time it really made itself known in my presence, is when I was attending a weekend retreat where there was a speaker there who specialized in gene keys specifically. I said specialized specifically, who specialized in gene keys. And so for the third time during this retreat, I pulled up my chart once again and took a look at it. And this time, third time's a charm, I looked at it and there were a few things that caught my eye and caught my attention. Finally. But honestly, most of that my profile was still over my head. So I started finally like having nibblings of like inklings to wanting to look into it more, but it just felt such a complex system that I couldn't quite wrap my head around at the time. At some point shortly after that, like a month or two after that, it took me this long, embarrassing as it is to say, maybe not, but a couple months after that, I finally made the connection that the gene keys were actually very intertwined with human design. In fact, the original channeler, the original person to download or to channel human design, to channel gene keys, was actually a student of human design for years, if not decades, before the gene keys really came through. And it was a few weeks after that discovery, when I started really getting into it more, that I actually discovered Eden Carpenter, who had a coaching certification, the Sacred Success Coaching Certification, that was based on human design and gene keys for using them and interpreting them for life, for business, for manifestation, abundance, prosperity. And when I saw this, it was this very in-depth, almost year-long certification. And I just knew that I had to join it because I finally understood was starting to understand how these systems work together. And I just knew I had to study it further. So now over a year later, I am. I'm studying both these systems in depth. I'm helping others navigate their own energetic blueprints through both of these modalities as well. Personally, there's a lot of coaches and just a lot of people who read for either one system or the other. Most people tend to pick one system or the other because they find it just more easily applicable and more relatable to the people that they're trying to speak to. Me personally, I love to almost float between these two systems. Yes, they're very related, they're very complementary to each other, but they are different. And I'm going to go into that a little bit more in this podcast episode. But I love to just kind of float. Like I literally am sitting here almost just floating, leaning back and forth, floating between the systems and allowing their wisdom and teachings to guide me in my own journey and through the journey of the people that I work with. So, while most of you know me for my work with human design, you may not know that the gene keys is exactly how to use them. You might have heard of them, but never really looked into it. You might have done the same thing I did, where you looked at your chart and you're like, I don't understand this. File that for later, perhaps. Or maybe you're just starting to understand it and you might have your head wrapped around it, but you might be a little curious about how I use them and how I use that in the dance and the balance between human design and gene keys. So I just wanted to take a moment, more than a moment, a whole podcast episode to explain. So human design, on one hand, is your true energetic blueprint. It was channeled by a man named Ra Uru Hu in 1987. Human design is called the science of differentiation because it helps us understand just how unique we are, how unique our souls are, and where our souls are in this particular journey, this particular trip on Earth. And it gives us clarity about how to best move through the world using our unique combination of energetic gifts. This system, this science, differentiation, is a synthesis of ancient wisdom and modalities. And I want to make sure to give credit where credit's due. So human design is a combination of astrology, the Chinese I Ching, the Indian chakra system, and the Kabbalah tree of life. It incorporates elements of all of these ancient wisdoms. And also woven into that nice little soup of ancient wisdom are the more modern sciences of quantum physics, of biochemistry, and of neuroscience. So it really incorporates quite a lot of things into this one system, which if you've been overwhelmed by human design or you just see how many layers there are to it, you totally understand how it can get so complex with all of these systems incorporated in one way or another. And human design can truly show you how you are designed to best operate in the world. It can show you your gifts, it can show you your strengths, and it can show you your blind spots and your shadows. Like very clearly, you can pinpoint things in your human design chart. And it can also show you how you best interact with others and the world around you, like what is best for your aura, how your aura comes in contact with another aura, how that energetic exchange works. Human design is amazing for that. Gene keys, on the other hand, was channeled by a man named Richard Rudd in 2002. Excuse me. And Richard Rudd was a longtime student, as I mentioned earlier, of Ra Uru Hu in human design. So this almost takes that system and takes it one step further, but it doesn't pull everything from that system. The gene key system elaborates and goes much more in depth in many ways than human design does. And I'll get more into detail of that in a second. But however, there is some overlap between these systems and they work really well together. And there's some things in gene keys that aren't emphasized. Like some of those wisdoms and modalities that are in human design aren't necessarily as emphasized in gene keys. It's kind of interesting to see what is present in both. And, in human design has certain things that gene keys doesn't. Gene keys has certain aspects or components to the system that human design doesn't. And a big aspect of gene keys, like you cannot talk about gene keys without talking about the science of contemplation or the action of contemplation. Contemplation is a term in gene keys for that brain space that is in between that focused effort, so where you're using your brain to focus on something very specifically, and surrendered meditation, where you're just in receiving mode. So contemplation sits in the middle of that. You're thinking about your gene keys hologenetic profile. You're thinking about how that sphere or that gene key applies to your life, or how you can apply it, or how you can step into a higher frequency of it. You're thinking about that, but you're not focusing so hard on it. On the other side of it, you're at least giving it some attention. You're kind of contemplating. You're getting curious about it. Contemplation to me is almost a synonym for just getting curious about what you're looking at and what you're thinking about, and how you can use that to step more into your purpose, to elevate your frequency, and how you kind of go from there. Let's see, did I miss anything? No. I mean, basically, as you continue to contemplate, you unconsciously, so the beautiful thing about gene keys is that the more that you contemplate, you sit in that beautiful in-between space between focused effort and just receptive meditation. As you sit in that contemplation space, you unconsciously begin to unlock your own internal awareness, elevating your frequency by literally changing your own DNA. That's why it's called gene keys. You are literally, by contemplating your hologenetic profile, you literally change your own DNA. I'm not using literally in a figuratively sense. It is literally, according to this system. So, and because both of these systems are based on astrology, in order to look up your profile, so if you've never looked up your human design profile, you need to know your date of birth, your time of birth, and where you were born. And the same thing applies to gene keys. You need to know precisely your birth information, because things can change very quickly. As the moon moves very quickly. And so knowing the exact time, the date and time that you were born is super important. Date, time, and location, excuse me. So, like I said earlier, when I use these systems with myself or with my clients, I love just kind of floating back and forth between them. There's definitely things that I like to use one system for over the other, and I'll explain that in a second. But I like the systems, like when I'm sitting in them and I'm receptive, I love for them to kind of just pull me in a direction that help, to guide me as to how I can apply it. Like I love just letting the systems guide me instead of me navigating the systems. So, with that being said, now that I've spent some time kind of navigating those waters, I want to share 3 ways that I personally differentiate between human design and gene key systems and how I use them. So, the first big way that I differentiate between these two systems is that human design, like I said earlier, it's basically like your operating manual. It's something where you open, you're like, it's very clear, like, oh, if you have this, you do this. If you don't have this, like, this is how you pinpoint where certain things are, where your strengths, your gifts, your shadows, like you can almost pinpoint things exactly as they are in human design. Whereas gene keys it really describes your hero's journey. It paints a picture of this path and this journey that you take, going like your journey that your soul is taking on this earth in this lifetime. So, like I said, human design is an operating manual, and it basically has all the answers about how to leverage your energy most effectively. Once you know how to decipher your chart, it gives you a very clear understanding of your gifts, your strengths, your blind spots. And if you know and you know how to interpret it, you get very clear action steps or tangible direction on how to leverage this knowledge best to stay open energetically and to stay in alignment. So I use human design in this context specifically to help my clients make relatively quick fixes, or to kind of have some more simple action steps to help them strengthen the projection of their energy field. So Human design is really about your aura and the energy within your aura and how that aura interacts with others. And so there's simple things that you can do to strengthen the projection of your aura by understanding your human design chart. So this is something where it's, like I said, it's quick fixes. You can make quick improvements. I mean, relatively quick improvements by understanding your chart. So for example, if you have an undefined G center, which I do personally, it's important that you create for yourself a calming and uplifting environment around you. Or if you, let's see, sorry, I just blinked for a second there. I lost my train of thought. So if you have an undefined G center, it's important that you have this calming and uplifting environment, because that helps you kind of reorient yourself and your brand. So if you are, like, speaking in the context of your business, I would say if you have an undefined G center, you should have an office environment that you feel like you love, like it looks good, it feels good, it kind of feels like the next version of yourself. I would try to do whatever you could to make your office environment feel that way, like to really create that uplifting and calming environment for yourself. Another quick example is if you have a defined emotional center, and you can get really clear or get crystal clear action steps about how to leverage that superpower that you have, that are your emotions and your feelings. And you can really, we can talk about how powerful that emotion is. And especially if you're someone that's been told your emotions are too much, we can take steps to help you step into that worthiness and that almost that pride of like having such an amazing superpower, like such a potent superpower. So that's, the operating manual of human design. Going into Gene Keys and that hero's journey of Gene Keys, the progression of the Gene Keys and on your golden path. So that's what they talk about in Gene Keys a lot, is your golden path, literally a journey, your path. It invites you on that journey to unravel the aspects of your soul that are tied up in either shadow or lower frequency. So as you venture along this path, you find something that's seated in your soul as a lesson, and you can kind of unravel it or unpack it as you go along this journey. You can, and just as you go. Whereas human design helps you understand the what and the how, Gene Keys helps you understand the why. So it gives you a lot more of understanding of why are you on this journey? Why you where did you get these shadows and low frequencies? Like, why are they stuck? What can you do to overcome? It gives you a little bit more detail in that regard. Because when you understand the why, you can face and overcome those shadows on your journey through that contemplation, that contemplative awareness. So there's a richness and a depth to the Gene Keys that human design just doesn't quite capture adequately. And I love diving into the details with my clients to help them understand and apply their own lessons along their golden path through their life and through their business. This depth really lends itself to building a strong marketing strategy, and especially a brand. It really helps you create that unmistakable brand, because as you activate those gifts that are hidden within your Gene Keys golden path, you truly begin to radiate the higher frequency of the gifts that you've uncovered. So I'm actually, just a little side note, I'm going to be releasing a new program soon that will help you use the Gene Keys and human design to create an unmistakable brand that radiates your inner magic from the inside out. And it's called Radiant, and you can actually get on the waitlist by clicking the link below in the video description. So that was the first big difference. The second big difference is that in human design, you evolve through experiencing external influences or external energies. And in Gene Keys, you evolve by that inward focus and focusing on your own internal frequency. So, like I said, human design is really the blueprint that helps you calibrate your energy with the external world in effective ways. When you know your design, you can understand how you can apply and integrate your gifts with other people and just the environment at large, the cosmic transits, people walking by you on the street when you're by yourself, your friends, your family, etc. And you can really understand, so you can anticipate and prepare yourself for these specific interactions that you think will either that you can leverage or that might trigger you. So human design is a great tool for self-growth. I mean, both tools are, but I love using human design specifically for relationships, for partnerships, and just for the cosmic activations at large. Which, if you're listening to this, maybe you know I put out a weekly podcast or a weekly episode called the Weekly Energetic Business Activation, where you can actually, I take these cosmic activations and explain them in a human design context and how you can integrate these activations within the cosmic transits into your own design and into your own business. And so I release this activation episode every Monday. So maybe you can listen to it on the next Monday. And so I give very tactical things about how you can use these transits and apply them to your business. So gene keys, on the other hand, where human design is evolution by the external forces around you, or external influences, I should say, not forces, influences, energetic influences. Gene keys is evolution by inward focus. So gene keys is truly about that inner journey. It is all going on inside of you. It's that inner awareness. It's your own contemplation of what you uncover on that journey. So while it is an entire sequence in Gene Keys devoted to relationships. There's actually 3 main sequences as of now. I believe there's a 4th one coming out in the next year or so, but there's 3 main sequences. And the first is your own inner activation, like activating your own gifts. The second is all about relationships. And the third is about prosperity, and which is super exciting. I haven't even really gotten into that on this podcast, but these are super exciting pathways that you can explore deeper. As you embark on this journey, and it's your own self-exploration and shadow work through these different journeys. So whereas human design is about adapting your external environment to better fit you and your own energetic blueprint, Gene Keys is just about going inward and untangling those dark shadows that are just keeping you in those lower frequencies. Your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. And by elevating your frequency, you are changing your external world from the inside out. And that's what Gene Keys is all about. And this is honestly why I love both modalities so much, because it's basically a 2-sided approach to creating a purpose-filled life of your dreams. Human design's more on the external, Gene Keys is more on the internal, and you can kind of work through both at the same, not necessarily at the same time, but you can work through both together, and it just helps you on every level. It's like gives you momentum, it helps you accelerate whatever result you're hoping to get. So that was the second difference. The third difference is that human design is really about active awareness. There's much more action to it, whereas Gene Keys is much more about that receptive awareness. So I've kind of alluded to this a little bit, but I want to dive into it as its own big difference that I use it for. So while integrating your human design can certainly be a more passive process or more of a receptive process, there's usually some sort of active element associated with it. So whether it's active thought about how you're responding to triggers in your environment, whether it's understanding or like bringing awareness needed to be able to embody the most aligned version of yourself, there's really more of that active, focused thought and awareness to it. For human design, there's almost an undertone of a masculine energy, specifically speaking to structure and implementation of what you learn through the system of human design. There's almost like this action taking inherent in it, which is such a beautiful thing. Action is what creates quick change. On the flip side, looking at Gene Keys specifically, on the other hand, this system is so much more receptive. It's so much more surrendered. it's a lot more, if you can't tell, it's a lot more feminine. You kind of have to just surrender and trust the process and let it unfold at its own natural pace and its own cycle. You can't really take action to embody your gene keys in the same way that you can take action to embody your human design. Contemplation specifically is a process that's a gradual unfolding and awareness that it truly happens in its own timeline. You can't force it, like I said. It can be revisited and re-examined. And when you do that, you are literally changing your own DNA from a place of stillness. So you can sit there in that receptive, contemplative awareness while changing, and your DNA is changing as you sit there, as you receive. You just have to be open to it and surrender to the timing of it, the pace of it, what that ultimate outcome is, and what results, quote unquote, results that you get as you continue to trust and surrender in that transformation. All right, so let's review the 3 big differences in human design and gene key system. The first is that human design is your operating manual, whereas gene keys is your hero's journey. The second is that human design is evolution by external influences, whereas gene keys is really evolution by that inward focus, the internal forces. And then thirdly, human design is all about active awareness. It's a little bit more masculine. And gene keys is more about receptive awareness. And therefore, it's a little bit more on the feminine scale or the feminine spectrum of that side of that spectrum. So I'll be honest, even though I've been pretty deep in my studies in the gene keys for about a year now, I personally am still learning and uncovering so much in my own divine timing about my own hologenetic profile and how to apply this to those that I work with. And I will continue to do so. I teach as I go, but I'm also learning as I go. I'm a student as much as I am a guide to some other people. And I'm sure that my understanding, as it is right now, of the similarities and differences between these two systems will also continue to evolve as my knowledge of both systems continues to evolve too. But I really wanted to share with you where I'm at right now so that you could also absorb this and let these beautiful systems kind of commingle in your own awareness as well. And so that maybe they can begin to gain traction for you in your own life as well. So I'm actually, as I mentioned, I'm launching a program specifically about how to create an unmistakable brand strategy that glows from the inside out by amplifying your inner magic. And it really takes both of these systems together, aspects of both of these systems to help you create that unmistakable, completely unique brand. It's going to help you systematically capture that beautiful heart of your brand, your frequency, and help you implement it to create your unique yet comprehensive and multi-sensory soulpreneur brand. The program is called Radiant, and you can get first access and exclusive promotions by getting on the waitlist now, and the link is below in the video description or in the episode description. And if you learned something new or resonated with what I said, I would love to meet you. Share your favorite part of this episode on your Instagram stories and tag me at Brie Couric, or send me a DM and say hello, and you can share what you learned or resonated with the most. I can't wait to hear from you. In our next episode, I'm going to be releasing the weekly energetic business activation, where I will be using the cosmic transits to give you specific recommendations about how to move your business forward. Just like I talked about or hinted to a little bit earlier in this episode, I cannot wait to share this with you, so stay tuned.